Welcome back, everybody. This week I sat down with Matt Holubowski, a singer-songwriter from Montreal. This guy is immensely talented, and he is such a nice guy. Thank you very much for coming through and talking with me, Matt. I loved talking about the process with you. I loved learning about this song. I love learning about how you see things and how you go through them. Definitely inspiring, and really reminds me of all the good reasons why I do this podcast. The song is Two Paper Moons. It was recorded for his previous record, Weird Ones. And honestly, I think you guys will enjoy discovering this one as much as I've enjoyed doing this. Matt's playing some shows this weekend. Actually, I shouldn't even say that because by the time this airs, it'll be gone. But he will be playing more shows in the coming weeks. So if you do like this, head on over to his Instagram, Matt Holubowski. And that's it for me this week, guys. I will be giving you more updates by next week. Matt.
Hello.
How you doing, man? Thank you for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
I've been looking forward to talking to you, and I really like your music, man. I'm a fan, and just thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
We were saying that, of course, the pre-interview banter is always the main part, basically.
Yeah, so it's all downhill from here.
I think so.
No.
I think it was nice meeting you, and have
cool.
a good day.
Let's just call it, a podcast to no one about nothing.
Absolutely. So you graciously gave me all the stems to Two Paper Moons.
Yes. Which I haven't listened to, by the way.
Really?
No. I kind of thought it would be interesting to kind of see what your take is, and I wasn't really I didn't really have an in-depth understanding of that whole process at the time, which I do now. And I've been meaning to dig into those stems myself, just
really?
and get Connor Seidel, who produced the record, to just send me the original Pro Tools files, so I could just go in and see how he set up the session and all that. And I haven't done that yet, so I don't know. Yeah.
Wow, man, that's extreme restraint on your part.
Well, I mean, I've heard the song a lot of times, so I've also listened.
You're
to
okay
it.
with this?
I've listened to it enough times. I know what's in it. So.
All right, man. Let's get to it.
Sure.
Hold on for a second. Let's start with the drums, I suppose.
Yeah.
So first of all, you're not playing drums on your songs, are you?
I'm not. No. Stéphane Bergeron plays drums on all the songs, and this is him playing. Actually, we recorded these drums later. The construction of the song is kind of interesting because I initially had this idea that I wanted just a big sort of hip hop kick drum,
right?
And acoustic guitar, and that's it, and nothing else, and have the momentum of the song be built by harmonies and maybe random little bleep bloops,
elements coming in.
Yeah,
right.
And and we worked on that version for quite some time, and we kind of got to the end, and Connor and I both sort of looked at each other one day, and we went is it boring? Does it maybe need something more? And I was like, you know what? I've been feeling this super indie, Wilson style drumming, and so we booked a session with Steph, and we just spent an afternoon kind of curating this part, and
really?
Because the way, so I write songs mostly to poems or to lyrics, and there tends to be all these random beats that are added or subtracted depending on the length of the phrase.
Oh, right, like actual beats.
So it's the song will be in 4/4, but there'll be there's a random bar that's 3 or 3.5.
Oh, so wait a minute. Are you saying that you're adding beats or subtracting them to fit the poetry?
Exactly. But it's totally subconscious. I don't even know that I'm doing it. I'm not like a trained musician. So
right. So if you had to think about it, you couldn't pull it off. What's this, by the way? What is this?
What?
We just heard oh.
Let's hear that again.
I don't know that we can though.
Okay, it's probably, if it's in the drums, it's probably it might be there's a train that passes by.
Okay.
And maybe it's the neighbors who are brewing their like pesticide thing, and they have this compressor that makes this weird noise.
That was crazy.
And it goes through the and we just that specific room is huge and super roomy, and we didn't actually think we were going to track there. But
this was done at the Tree House?
No, this was actually done at my studio up on Van Horn.
Gotcha. Yeah, right.
Which is like a big industrial concrete room, so lots of bleed.
Yeah.
And we just went there to actually work on the part, not to record it. And then we had never recorded drums there before.
Okay.
And we just set it up, and we're like, oh, They sound
great.
Great.
They sound great.
So it went through like some super cheap mics, and we had one mic input coming out of this like crappy tape machine, and we took one source from there as well.
Connor was with you when you were recording those?
Yeah. So Connor was producing, and this was a tough one because Steph is like he's like such a wonderful like tight player.
Right.
But all of these offbeats were just such a mindfuck that...
Right. Because there's no actual pattern to them.
Yeah. So It would have to be like, he'll play the part and it would be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And we'd have to like point it out for him to to sort of get it the first time until he learned the part. But like curating this particular drum part was a really great team effort between the three of us. You know, specifically choosing where the crashes would come in, where we would add and remove a kick.
This is brilliant, man, because we're touching on something that I've had conversations about in regards to other musicians that, let's say whoever you listen to and I listen to. I've come to a realization, and maybe this seems really obvious to you, I'm sorry, is that sometimes we intellectualize a lot of our favorite musicians' work. Like, how are they doing this? Why are they doing this? How did they manage to do this? And I started to notice that, I believe that a lot of artists, they're not even doing it purposefully.
Hell no.
So in the same way that I might listen to your song mathematically and say, how is he doing this? He's such a genius. He's counting and he's going off. And then really what you're saying is
turns out I'm just musically illiterate.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking like, people who listen to my podcast know, like I'm always talking about Tom York, but like...
Yeah.
The choices he makes sometimes, I'm always going like, how can he do this mindfully?
I saw an interesting interview of him recently where he was like, I don't really know how to play the guitar. I just kind of like, I don't know how to play the piano either. I just kind of wing it. Like he doesn't read music. He doesn't, and he just kind of, he plays what he feels. And when something sounds good, then he just goes with it and it becomes instinctive. I think songwriters who are not very theoretically inclined are going to do that. And there's this, I've for the last few years I've kind of been going back and forth between the idea of like going to school and learning theory.
Oh really?
And then like my whole band is like, don't do it, you're going to kill the magic. They're all like either like classical or jazz trained musicians, and they're just like, it's great, but like let us do the technical shit and you just focus on like being naive, because it ends up, these mistakes end up being charming.
Absolutely.
Or more interesting, without, nobody would necessarily realize that Two Paper Moons is such like a straight linear tune.
Right.
And there are so many, we would say, jambettes, in the song, so yeah, I think
I agree with you. I feel the same way about my music. Whenever I'm creating, I'm aware enough now, old enough, experienced enough to know that my lack of whatever is actually my strength. Mm-hmm. Because I just keep pushing through it.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm drawing a parallel here without knowing, but I can kind of assume that we function the same in that sense, where it's like, I see my limitations, but I'm just going to go head on.
Sure.
And I'm not going to let that stop me. In fact, I'm using it to my advantage.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not to necessarily preach like, getting lazy and not learning what you should be learning. But there's definitely something to be said about just like honing in on the things that you're good at and not worrying too much about those things that you're not good at.
We can never speak enough about that, man, because people get discouraged so easily.
Well, also like music is a collaborative effort. We do it together, and we do it because we want to communicate with other human beings, and it's okay to lean on other people. Like other people have better skills. Like I could never play this drum pattern. I would never think to even try. So I couldn't have done it without Steph.
I agree, man. I think it's I think all good artists know how to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So this is the drum noise track. That you
This
sent me.
is-
I love these. These are like my favorite little things because this is the secret sauce.
This is like okay. So that's the first thing we heard is just like a clave. Steph has been really, especially now, but at the time he was really into just trying all these guitar pedals through drums. So he had like this sort of contact mic that you put on your lapel when you're doing an interview.
Piezo.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
No,
yes.
just like a contact mic.
Yeah, sure.
And he would just like put it on either snare or whatever thing he wanted to.
So that the
and
thing
and
would,
then
like,
that
be
would
too
go
hot?
through his console, which would go through some reverbs and distortions.
Right.
And the clave is just like him going through this reverb. And then the other thing you heard is actually this big metal sheet that he got like at Home Depot.
Got it.
It's just like huge sheet that he has next to, if you ever seen his like drum rig, he's always got this metal sheet that he just kind of lightly taps and he has it go through this big reverb, this big distortion, and it kind of does like a bit of an explosion noise.
Absolutely.
And,
I've seen drummers with like I love drummers that like have more than a drum kit.
Yeah.
It's such a statement.
It's awesome.
It's such a statement. It's like, does he have 2 bass drums?
No, he's like a fairly, simple. He's got a fairly simple setup. It's just this one thing. We all started wanting to get into something a little more ethereal, and he got really excited by the idea. He was in this other band, Carquois, like back in the day, and he had always been the more technical drummer, and he's been like wanting to do this pedals and drum machines for years and years and years, but he's just like, he's a good drummer. Why does he need some beatbox, and now he kind of, like me, came to the conclusion that, maybe it's just like an interesting thing.
It's just another layer.
It's another layer. So we have hours and hours and hours of mini explosions and reverb splashes and all that jazz.
I started playing music as a drummer, and then I got to sort of that point too where I was like, I discovered like drum machines, and I was just like, I don't need to play drums anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're cool. There's just
the feel.
It's the feel will never be the same, and fills and all that stuff. You can always overdub, but there's nothing like a real drummer playing. We've been doing, not on Weird Ones, but on the stuff we're working on now, is like a lot of juxtaposition of electronic and natural drums.
Ooh, so the worlds are colliding.
They're colliding, yeah, totally.
What can you tell me about this new record, man? Like maybe, you know what? Don't even say too much. What could you tell me, perhaps maybe it's too early in that process, but like, how do you go into a new record? Do you think of the old one to inform the new one? In terms
I don't know.
Of, like,
I mean,
not repeating yourself.
It's so different. Like, if you're a producer, you do like, I don't know, 50 records a year. If you're an artist, you do one every 3 years, so I don't think that I have enough records under my belt to say that there's like a standard way that I go into doing a record.
Right, yeah.
It's really been different every time, especially since I started out like I didn't know anything about anything, and I just had an acoustic guitar that I played for my friends, and I met Connor and he recorded me, and I had all these songs, and I was really into Dylan at the time, and then as I started to learn and play with a band for the first time, my desires evolved, and what I wanted to explore became completely different. So and what's actually interesting now is that I'm kind of coming full circle in that I've gotten really deep into the random noise exploration, and I'm starting to get into synths, and then I actually was sort of starting to look, maybe I should go into this modular thing, and then I kind of put the brakes on that and went,
Whoops.
You know what? I've been craving something a little more simple. My first record was just vocals and guitar, and it was really folky, and I've always felt like when you make a record, you kind of have to choose a direction, and which is to my dismay, because I want to do so many things. Like, I'd love to make a punk record. I'd love to make a James Blakey.
Dude, you need to
glitchy
do all
drum
of these
record.
things. Just do it all.
Well, the thing is, I'm not prolific enough a songwriter, and I don't necessarily feel like a song has to mean something really profound to me in order to release, and that doesn't happen that often.
Right.
And especially when I'm trying to do something in a style, it doesn't really work. But when it just becomes that, naturally, then I'll go there. So now I'm actually working on 2 parallel projects where
Really?
we're doing one like way crazier than Weird Ones.
Okay.
Lots of brass on this one, and almost no acoustic guitar.
Whoa.
Not that much guitar, quite honestly. It is very rhythm based. I worked a lot with one-on-one with Steph, so we've been working a lot on like the rhythmic stuff.
Sick.
So it's really cool, and it's going in a whole different direction. There's some super weird shit, but I'm also craving just like I just want to sit with an acoustic guitar and play. So I'm in parallel. I'm rewriting those same songs and new ones in like a much more intimate context. So
that's a great exercise.
Yeah. So the plan is to finish, because now I'm sort of just trying to get this one. I can't do everything at once, so I'm doing the more crazy modern version now, and then when that's done, while it's being mixed and mastered and visuals and all that, I'm gonna like hole up in a cabin with like a tape machine by myself and just record an acoustic
amazing
version of the album. I don't know if it'll be a double album or special edition, or haven't figured that part out yet, but
dude, I love this. That's crazy.
We'll see how it goes.
Look at you.
I mean, I say that I always have these grand plans, and then reality hits you in the face, and
we've
you're like, hey, I have 24 songs that I want to release that are on 2 different records, and I want to release them simultaneously, and then the label's like, that's not gonna work. Like, I mean, you can do it, it's just not gonna have the the reach necessarily. You have to sort of hone in on one thing, and I would love to just release a record and then immediately start working on a new one and just move on. But then you just released it, and a bunch of money was spent on this record, so like you have to tour that record, and you got to do that for a while. Even though by the time you finish a record, you got to wait 6 months before it's released. By which time you've written a bunch of new songs. Now you release the record. Songs are old for you. You got to tour for a year and a half on those songs, and by the end of it, you're like, I fucking hate these songs.
hard life, my man. Hard life.
Well, I mean, yeah.
By the way, who are you signed with? These are things I always forget to look at.
It doesn't really matter that much. I'm signed with Audiogram, who are great. They've been really very generous to me over the years, and we've done great stuff together. And
have you been with them since day one?
Yep.
Right.
Well, day 2, I guess. I signed with them after Old Men, so for just before Solitudes, and so I've done 2 full-length records with them, and an EP, and I've got one more that I'm working on now.
Sick.
And yeah.
And for those who don't know, man, how long have you been playing music? How old are you, first of all?
I'm 33.
Right.
And I started playing guitar at like 18.
Oh, so kind of later.
Yeah. And I didn't really start doing it seriously until like 25, 26. It was kind of, I was doing completely other stuff. I was doing some open mics and stuff here and there, but mostly I was going to be a teacher, an English teacher. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which explains your fondness for words.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
And communicating.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. That's great. I also am really big into the poetry and the words and their meaning, and I feel that, like, music aside, that is my most personal contribution to my music. How do you feel about your poetry in that sense? What place does it hold in your
it's basically the root of everything. Everything stems from there,
right?
In my mind. We all have different ways of expressing ourselves. I've always loved expressing myself through words. It's a very personal process. So
sure is.
I suppose I've in many ways tried to be, or not tried to be, maybe it was intentional, but being extra cryptic, because I guess I don't fully own sometimes the things that I feel or I want to say, so I'll make it like I'll say he instead of I, as a way of projecting it onto somebody else. But ultimately, lyrics for me are enormously cathartic, because it's kind of when you can put your finger on something, you're like, I'm not sure how I feel, and then you can explain it in words. You're like, oh, that is so liberating to understand. And then when you share it with people and they also feel the same way, or they go like, man, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, that's the most powerful thing of it.
Yeah,
for me.
So and I also like nice, like cool words. So I sometimes just like
Yeah.
on my previous record, I had this song called Opprobrium,
Right.
which I wrote. You know, it stemmed from I found this cool word, which is a severe reproach upon oneself. So like an opprobrium is like you're really pissed off at something that you did,
Right.
and you hold it yourself
Reproach.
against it.
Right. Yeah.
And I just thought that was a cool word, so I wrote a song around that word. You know,
Yeah,
like, how do I make that word?
That's the more intellectual side of it.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of the same thing. Like sometimes I'll find like a word or a sentence, and I'm like, oh, how can I be clever and just put it in there? And then I don't know for you, but like most of the time, my clever words or things like they just don't fit phonetically and shit I'm trying to do.
I cut a lot of the. I think when, you know, let's say writing a song from a cool word is one thing, but trying to fit a cool word somewhere just to fit it in is another. I think like it has to make sense in the context, and
For sure.
if you just throw in fancy words to seem cool, or interesting, it has to be something that you'd also use naturally, I think. But as far as pronunciation, man, like I grew up listening to so much Eminem, and I don't know if you ever watched that classic video of him, you know, rhyming with orange.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, he's rhyming orange with porridge and door hinge, and
Yeah.
it's also malleable. You know, you look at a studio, and you could literally take the sound source of our voice and turn us into robots the entire time.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing with the way that we project sound. We could definitely just you can make it malleable.
You work it in.
Stretch words and
We were talking about Tom York, you know, and Tom York is really a good example of like somebody that's like, you got to listen a few times before you get what he's saying.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And it doesn't matter. Who cares?
It doesn't matter.
You know,
Yeah.
if it makes you feel something.
So this says French horn,
This is French horn.
but
so actually the guy who's producing my current record is Pietro Amato.
right.
And he's like a particular French horn player because he went to like all of this, you know, jazz school and everything. And
This is beautiful, by the way. I'm sorry to interrupt you, man.
Yeah.
This is.
You want to listen for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
So he did, this is like what we're hearing now is just a few layers of pad stuff, but all of the sort of like reverse things is it's going through like a ring modulator, and he plays through a whole bunch of pedals, and he just like plays. He'll hold the long note and he'll just like twist a knob, and this is the same. He holds a note and the note is just kind of cut. I don't know if that's the ring modulator as well, or like
I think it could be. I follow a girl on Instagram who plays horn as well, and she has like a little modular thing, and she does kind of that too. Now that you say it, I hear it. But honestly, and again, like, because it's a really beautiful song, man. I really enjoy this song, and
Thank you.
Hearing all these little things really just like, it's nice to hear the care that goes into things.
This was so Connor and I really wanted to get some horn on this, and Pietro is a great friend of Simon Angel, who's our guitar player, and they played together with like The Owls. That's his like full band, him and his wife, and with Pat Watson they played a bunch, and like they've both like have been part of the Montreal music scene for a while, and Pietro's played on kind of everything. And when I was asking the guys like, oh, who do you think we should get to play horns, they were like, yeah, call Pietro, he's amazing. So, and he played with Antoine Corriveau, and I saw him perform with Antoine, and I thought he was just the coolest looking dude. He always wears these like big cat t-shirts, and he's like this like super tall big dude.
No.
And he's just like the most, and he's the sweetest guy, and he's just a genius at texture and
Clearly.
yeah.
I've met Connor once, but now it's like I think maybe my second or third time dissecting a record he's worked on.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm gonna have to get him in here eventually to talk about his approach.
You should, yeah.
Man, that was just beautiful. Let's do the keys. What keyboard is this?
Farfisa.
Right.
This is this Farfisa belonged to Simon's wife,
Okay.
Erica, who uses this exact instrument all over, like all the Das Owls records.
Don't you feel like it's just like perfectly sad?
Farfisa is the most beautiful thing ever.
Man, like
well played.
like speaking of synths, I would like to get a Farfisa. Would be.
I bought one 2 weeks ago, but a small, like one of the Fast Fives. It only has 4 sounds on it. It's just like lighter and
Fair enough.
much cheaper.
I bet. Man,
but
like
so this is Marianne Hull playing on this, and she's actually a cello player, and she's been playing cello in the band since the beginning.
Wow.
And she's fantastic. And when we started the process of this record, we both were craving something other than cello.
right.
She didn't really want to play cello anymore, and I didn't really want, and I kind of wanted more synthy stuff.
Sure. So it kind of worked out.
And who's playing? I don't even know who's
Man,
playing
this
piano
is
on this.
beautiful.
This might be Simon. So that's this was recorded at Wild Studio in Saint-Zénon.
Beautiful.
And maybe Simon played this Farfisa part, actually. Yeah, that piano is yeah, I guess there's a couple tracks here. So you have that sort of bum, 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 is a piano that we just put through the little altar boy. You know that one? Sound Toys.
I think I do. Sometimes I forget, man.
It's just like
Little
a cool
altar boy.
cool plugin. And that was a Connor trick. And yeah, the Farfisa is nice because Mariana always has such beautiful voicings, and she does all the string arrangements as well.
Right.
She did a lot of the synth arrangements on this record too. A lot of the cool parts, like on Moon Rising, is her, and the vocal oohs and ahs, like in Around Here, are her as well. And she's got such an interesting mind when it comes to creating these parts, and even something as simple as a Farfisa pad, she manages to do it with such emotion.
Dude, I'm sad just listening to this. This is I love this.
And if you think about the song, initially the song was just this, my acoustic guitar,
Okay.
and a kick drum. That was the whole song. There was nothing else.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I mean, at the end, like, it makes sense that at first it's not like and I don't want to like ask too broad of a question here and like corner you, but like I'm asking this innocently, I feel like your music, my word would be sort of introspective and on the sad side, on like sort of the mellow side of things. And it's not an accident, obviously, like it's definitely a mood and it's a direction that you take. It seems like, when I listen to, like, we were talking about Gab Elliott Maginot, when you listen to one of his records, there's a definite intention in the mood, there's definite intentions in your music. Who sort of influenced you for, like, these songs? Or, like, I know that's a big question, but, like...
I mean, the funny part is that I actually listen to so many different types of music that I don't know that necessarily the sad music is the thing that had the biggest influence on my songwriting. I think I just I kind of realized early on that life is very tragic, and but I'm also a very optimistic person and very hopeful, and I see such greatness in people in general, and I think that my music is kind of a meeting between those two things, fatalism and hope. Then more specifically in music, like, Radiohead is a very obvious influence, but the music that got me to buy my first acoustic guitar was Elliott Smith.
Okay.
So
right.
I was like obsessed with Elliott Smith. And yeah, I was like in this punk band in Cégep, terrible punk band called Chronic, Kronek. And I wasn't the singer. I was the lead guitar, and I sucked at guitar. And we were in a punk band, so it didn't matter.
Woo! I love this. Is there any footage?
There's some pictures of us, and we look pretty ridiculous.
Dude, like, is this on YouTube? Can I go on YouTube and listen?
No,
man, put it on Bandcamp. What are you doing?
No. Maybe if I do a Patreon someday, I'll do it. But so we did this Cégep en spectacle thing I was at John Abbott College in St. Anne de Bellevue, and we were playing as part of that thing, and there were these two guys. I never met them, I never spoke to them, because they just kind of came in, did their thing, and left. And they both had like these acoustic guitars. One of them was playing harmonica, and they did this cover of Twilight by Elliott Smith.
Right.
And it just broke my heart. And it was like all of the teenage angst that I hoarded for way too long disappeared that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when I understood this tragedy that is life.
Right. Yeah.
And it was like so exemplified in there, and it actually ended up being such a gift because it tamed the anger that I had in me, and I suddenly was no longer angry, and I had for the first time accepted what it is that I might be feeling, and it was represented in this song by Elliott Smith. And so from then on, like, I quit that band like a week later. I bought an acoustic guitar and I just started doing like Elliott Smith covers. And
beautiful, man.
And I guess that's maybe the source of where this.
These were just my words, just my way of
sadness.
explaining it. Yeah.
So sad. Yeah. I mean, it's part of life, man. Sometimes I'm sad. Sometimes I'm happy.
Yeah, but I think you said it well. Like, it's I of course, it's not just sad. There is the beautiful light in there, but it's so contemplative.
Yeah.
And it's just, it carries me. Like, your music carries me. And it's always curious. Like, I don't know you, so I'm like, what's this guy like, Because he's making this, like, really profound music that touches me. And then it's like, shit.
There's also, I definitely do, I'm like a brooding kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time ruminating, and I've done like a fair bit of traveling outside of the music context, and
right.
I've always loved like backpacking, and I love being alone, and just like staring out into space and just thinking about whatever.
I believe it, man.
And then writing about it. It's really just like, it's a lot of that.
I love knowing that, because it makes sense.
It's amazing what you can learn when you
shut up.
You just shut up and you listen to whatever's going on in your mind, when
Absolutely.
things start to calm down, some pretty interesting stuff.
I'd have to agree, man. I think, all, again, like I was saying earlier, like, all good artists know how to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, this is
actually like recycled chords from a song that I didn't like.
Okay.
I wasn't playing it at all. It wasn't the same finger picking pattern, but the chords, that like F major 7 that comes back at the beginning, was, I just used it for a different tune, and I actually do remember exactly when I wrote that. A friend had lent me their cottage for the week. I just wanted to go up and write some tunes, and I had such heavy writer's block, and I brought like all too much gear. I brought all this stuff, and then I ended up just using the acoustic guitar, and I was trying to write lyrics, and I had such a crazy writer's block, and I was reading Crime and Punishment at the time, which was like a terrible idea for the state of mind that I was in. It's like this book about this like paranoid, borderline schizophrenic who's about to murder someone, and I was like, wow, that's kind of how I feel. I probably shouldn't read this. And I reached out to Marc-André, my bassist, and I was like, man, you need to give me like a better book to read. And he was like, I've been telling you, man, you got to read some Murakami, who's a Japanese author. Okay. And so I went out that day and I bought a couple of Murakami books, and I started reading this book called IQ 84. Okay. And I spent 5 days. I was at the cottage for 6 days. I spent 5 days reading the book. I finished the book in 5 days. And then the 6th day I wrote the song. And it was like the end of about a 6-month writer's block. I hadn't written a song in 6 months. And this guitar part just kind of came really instinctively.
So you see, that's how the creative process works, is like which we always talk about on this podcast, right? It's like, this is just a good example of ingesting information to then, in the spur of the moment, deliver what you've been ruminating, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the best artists are those who consume the most art, and I forget that too sometimes. You kind of get in a workflow and you're like, I want to be productive, and you're trying to always like do something, and you feel like, oh, if I spend all my days in the studio, then that's going to be the best way to write a song. But truthfully, sometimes you just need to spend 2-3 days reading a book or like binge watching some cool movies.
Live life.
Yeah, like, or have some interesting conversations with people. And
you know what, man? I'm gonna remember that. I haven't thought about that in a minute.
One thing that reminded me of that recently, because I'd forgotten about it, was I saw this interview of Paul McCartney on some late show, and I think it was like Colbert or something, and he was asking Paul, like, how is it that at that age you guys came out and wrote like so many songs? You were so prolific and they were so interesting. How did you do that with the Beatles? And his answer was like, we grew up just like listening to so many different types of music. We had so many records, and so when it came time to put it out, we were just kind of like transmitting what we had received, but through our own voice. And I think that's how I've always approached songwriting, is like, and that's why the line is kind of blurred sometimes between ripping off an artist and being influenced by them. And that's because truly anything that we'll ever say is just an amalgamation of everything that we've received.
Yeah, of course.
As much in our political beliefs as in our
just your
behaviors and all that. It's just...
But it's also, doesn't that raise the more interesting question, then who am I really?
Oh, Jesus.
Right?
You want to go there?
No, but like, dude, of course, I live there. Like, I'm not afraid of these things, but I don't mean that as a joke. Like, that's...
The moment that you realize that you're not that original is the most liberating thing in the world. And you and I are both a product of everything that's come before us.
Yeah.
And that's nothing wrong with that.
But I also find that causes conflict within myself, because then I'm like, again, okay, I realize now as I live this life and as I go through it, this is my father's thought, and this is the thought of my friends.
Yeah.
So those are not mine. And then I find sometimes I'm not aligned with myself, because it's this question I have to ask myself more often. What do I really think? What do I really feel? Because right now, if I'm being honest, I'm being influenced by this, my reality, so to speak.
So let me ask you this. Why is it so important for you to have that? Why?
To figure that out?
Why do you really need that individuality? Why can it not be a shared experience? We live on this earth and we share it with other people. And if your friend's idea becomes your idea, isn't that just a shared idea? And you've come to an agreement that you've told me this thing that you think, and I agree with that. Based on all my other experience that I've gotten from other people, I think that you might be right about this thing. And therefore, are you ripping off his idea, or are you just meeting him, at a place where you're both at, but he just happened to express it before you did?
I don't disagree with you in that sense. I would have to feel very good with that. I think what makes me suffer more is when I do something bad and I'm like, I'm not even that thing. Like, where does that bad reflex come from? And I don't want to be that thing anymore. I want to change that, So like right now I'm doing therapy, and it's kind of that. It's like what really belongs to me and what's been given on by my father, my past, my childhood. And like, in a sense too, creatively, sometimes I'm thinking, I don't want to sing about somebody else's idea. What am I really trying to say? So I guess, that's where I live. That's where I spend a lot of time. What am I really trying to say? What am I, Sasha, trying to say in this song?
There's only one way to figure that out, and it's to say it. And say it a bunch of different ways, and also not to be afraid to mess up. That's one of the things, like, especially in our culture, where like if you say the wrong thing one time, you're out. The truth is, humans have only existed this far because of trial and error, and error is an important part of progress. And to tell yourself that your mistakes are not a good thing is really damaging. It's
absolutely. I think maybe it's accepting them sometimes it's harder.
Well, yeah. If you tell yourself like, okay, I messed up, and I know that this is not what I want. This is not who I want to be. And you move forward from that, and you learn from it, and that's why when people commit crimes, they go to jail, and when they come out, hopefully they're a better person. It's like you learn. You're like, okay, so I don't rob stores. I don't like that part of me because it lands me in jail.
Yeah, and that's
just a very far stretch of an analogy.
No, but I mean, it's those things for me. Like the creative pursuit really lends itself to finding out. Okay, like what am I trying to say? Because this sounds like this artist, this sounds like my friend, this sounds like Tom York. Where am I living? And anyways, there's no answer to that, but it's a good exercise.
No, I have a song on Solitudes called Wild Drums.
Okay.
And there's this guitar part that I wrote and recorded, and I did it before I met the current band that I'm with, and and Simon comes into the band, and we're rehearsing, and he's like, oh, what do you want me to play in the song? I was like, oh, this part I'd really love if you could pick that part because I'm doing something else. And he's like, no, I can't do that. And I was like, why? He's like, because it's basically the same thing as a Pat Watson song that I wrote. And I was like, oh, fuck, really? And he's like, yeah, but don't worry, Pat rips off Tom Waits all the time, so everybody does it.
Hilarious.
So don't worry about it. It's just I don't feel comfortable playing it. And I was like, oh, Jesus. And I had no idea.
That's
obviously
so funny.
It probably happened subconsciously, and it sounds nothing like it in the context.
For sure.
But if you were to isolate that guitar part, then you'd be like, oh yeah, it's pretty similar. So everybody does it. It's just a matter of context.
Owning it, yeah.
Well, it's owning it, but it's also context.
You're
like you can take the exact same guitar part or tone and put it in a completely different environment, and it will sound different. And that's
for sure. And this one is called Twinkle Guitar. That's a very specific name for it.
This one. Oh, this is Simon.
Got it.
This is classic Simon Angel. Simon is like, and this is kind of funny, but he's like the king of tone, which is funny because it's a pedal that we both have also. But he has mastered the art of slipping in.
Right.
And that is through years of playing with Pat. Pat plays piano, so
it's quite full
busily.
Already. Yeah.
And so he has started to play in a way that was like he sees an opening and he just goes in.
Those are that's the best thing to do anyways.
Yeah, and he doesn't he never overplays unless we want him to. And so in contexts like this, his role was simply like adding a beautiful texture and a bit of a momentum, with that arpeggiated part.
Sure. But it's, we just heard the other guitar and just like imagining them one on top of the other, it's like, that's the song,
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else is needed in terms of like.
And this part wouldn't have been written without all the other stuff either.
Sure.
It's
a response to it.
Yeah, and that's what it should be. It should be communicating with one another. And we play a lot live together, so we know each other and where to intervene and where it's appropriate to play what.
Yeah, for sure.
So all this, and especially now, like with the new stuff that we're doing, it was like shocking how quick everything came together.
Right.
I would bring a song and I'd be like, this is like the approximate mood that I have, and we'd play and it would be like, okay, well that's the song, easy, cool, we're done.
Sick.
But that comes from having incredible players,
Yeah, I was gonna say. You're very well surrounded.
Like unbelievably. I have to pinch myself sometimes to.
Dude,
I'm very grateful.
But you obviously. It makes sense. Your music really lends itself to their skill for sure.
It's a team effort.
Let's go with vocal harmony.
I gotta real quick put in some parking.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's when I wasn't checking a text or anything. I just don't want to get a ticket, and I get a lot of tickets. So
that's no good.
No.
Well, while you do this.
Oh jeez, yeah, the vocal, huh? Forgot about
so, what's happening here? Because it feels like a reverse. It feels like this. This is.
Well, this is just the natural. This is the harmony.
Yeah, it felt like you were saying words and then you weren't saying words earlier. You were just doing syllables or something. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, when we do these back vocal tracks, like they're not necessarily always all live. We sort of do it by section.
Yeah.
To make it as tight as possible.
Of course.
And there's a lot of like messing around in between takes. So
Right.
it'll just be me going like, woo, like some stupid thing. And then Connor will be like, oh, this is cool if I put it through this crazy delay or
Yeah.
reverse thing.
Yeah.
And then he'll just recycle that stuff and make it cool.
It's great. I enjoyed discovering that because a lot of things I heard in those stems, I did not particularly hear them.
No, but you
in
feel
the
them.
song. You absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's great to discover that.
Yeah, and this sounds like it's probably like doubled back vocals where one of them is going through, I think we were using like a Valhalla reverb, and the other one is the Arturia rev plate, which is kind of like a distorted reverb.
Right.
Connor loves using that. I love it as well, to just kind of give like a little bit of like harmonics off the top that are really nice.
Absolutely. This is great. This is great. Like this was. It's honestly, it's great. It's brilliant. I would not have thought of any of this.
This is, I'm not sure. I actually don't know what. I said that about the rev plate, but now I realize that it probably is not that, because Connor didn't mix the record. Zach Hansen mixed the record.
Okay.
And listening to this I've never listened to this isolated track before until now.
Dude.
And
Brilliant.
And it reminds me of why we got Zach Hansen to mix the record. Who's the guy who mixed it? And it's because it reminds me of Bon Iver, which he mixed.
Right.
So
Amazing.
Like, those guys really know how to mix vocals.
I'm very envious of that stuff because it doesn't come to me. You know, like these ideas, what we just heard, like the delivery of those vocals and the processing of it, like, fuck, I wish I could do that.
I'm sure you can. Just trial and error, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You do it and it sucks until it's good. That's
how that works.
That's how that works. There's no other way to do it. Anybody who's like, there are very few people who can be great or interesting off the top. It's like, this is a whole different style of music, but I'm a huge Dave Grohl fan, and I just love his persona. And at one point, I read something about him where he was like, "How do you become good? Like, you have to go to your garage and play with your shitty friends, and you have to suck until you're good."
Absolutely.
You know?
One we know and one we don't.
Beautiful, man.
Gray and green.
When did you start singing again?
So that band Chronic that I was in?
Yes. Yes.
There was a song that went na 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 na, I want my purple flower, and it was kind of like a group vocal thing.
You need to release this.
And it was terrible. And it's that song is actually about the singer's from Newfoundland, and it's about this guy from his high school that the rumor was that he stuck frozen wieners in his asshole, and that's the beginning of the song. It goes, Billy boy, he likes his frozen wieners, and he likes to stick him in a shit chute. Which totally fits over these vocals.
It does.
But so he asked me, or the rest of the band, to do just backup vocals on a track we were recording, and they didn't know how to sing at all, and I had never really sung before, but I was really on key, and he mentioned that he was like, man, every take we're doing, you're like right on the note, and
that sort of gave you the
and it was like weeks before that Elliott Smith saga where I quit the band, and I was like, I'm gonna be the singer.
I noticed that you're not pushing your voice.
Not here, no.
This is very much controlled, smooth. It's coming out. You're not pushing. Would you say that this is sort of your more comfortable zone?
This is actually a really hard song to sing because it's a lower register and the air runs out quicker, but they're very elongated notes. Like I hold them.
Yeah.
So I end up tailing a lot of it with vibrato because I'm running out of air, and it's the only way. If I don't hit that vibrato, then I'll probably
You're
go flat or
expending all
sharp.
the air. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's beautiful. That's what I noticed.
Yeah, I've gotten better at doing this, but this was really hard to do well at the time of the record, because it's also a new song, and you're like not used to it yet, and I hadn't really developed the technique for that sort of singing, but I wanted to do something a little more restrained because I'd done a lot of yelling.
It sounds effortless.
Well, thank you.
And of course, I have to ask, what is this song about to you?
So this lyric that's just coming up now.
Sometimes is left behind.
Something quiet is left behind was, I initially wanted to name the record Something Quiet Left Behind
Nice.
because of that lyric. And that's something that's vaguely pulled out of that IQ 84 novel by Murakami. And at that time, I was sort of leaving behind a part of my life that had been particularly heavy, and things got really great really quick, but it kind of happened at the same time as like losing control of myself on a personal level, and the struggle to keep face through all that was pretty tough. And then when the tour ended, I was just so burnt out. I ended up going to Poland for 2 months to just like not talk to anyone and recuperate energy. And this was at a time where I was trying to move past this difficult period, and I suppose I told myself that it was always going to be a part of me. It was always going to represent who I am, but it was something that I could, should, and wanted to leave behind. And so in that respect, I thought that the best way to move forward in difficult times was to create like this imaginary narrative where everything was exactly as I wanted it to be. And that idea came from this novel from Murakami, which it's basically, there are two completely parallel worlds that are almost exactly the same, except that in one, there's two moons, and in
Right.
one, there's only one. And the differences are ever so slight, but you can only tell from these specific signs which world you're in. And so that gave me the idea of creating this sort of second parallel existence that I could hop in and out of at will. And so that's also where like the theme for the song The Highlands came, and a couple of songs on that record, and a few of the ones coming up as well, because I feel very strongly about that idea. And
Duality, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it comes duality, but also just like retreating within oneself is something that I've always appreciated. You seem to appreciate that too. And when things are shit in the real world and you can retreat within yourself and it's awesome there, then why not do it? And so I wanted to sort of put that into words. And that's like the super general broad description of Two Paper Moons, but I mean, we can go line by line, and I can
There's no wrong answer. Of course, I don't want to press people too much on
I'm usually pretty open. Like if I put it on a song, it's because I feel comfortable talking about it, but it's more that the subject is so exhaustive that I genuinely could go line by line and tell you why I used this word there. And
we don't have to do that for sure. But it really depends. Like sometimes you ask that question and you get like an answer. I don't know. It just came to me. They're just words, and then sometimes somebody has a very specific answer. So you never know. And I'm always nervous to ask that question because sometimes people are sort of like guarded with this. They're like, I don't know that I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, I mean,
it's funny.
Some of it is just like, let's say, for example, in the chorus, I sing, "Holy wine ache, we drank a whole lake." Right. And the word lake came from the fact that there's a song, Flume by Bon Iver, where he sings about lapping lakes like leery loons. And I think that's one of the most beautiful lyrics.
Now that you say it, I know exactly what you're saying.
Lapping lakes like leery loons. Like what a beautiful way of putting it. And for some reason, like the other words didn't really matter to me, but I was like, I want to put the word lake somewhere at some point. This was just in the back of my mind. And then I suppose I was thinking about like the industrial quantities of wine I was drinking at that time. And I was like, this is like I imagined in my imaginary world how cool it would be to have like a lake that was made of wine. Man. And then the holy wine ache came afterwards, where I was like, oh, a lake full of wine. That reminds me of, Jesus, and
There you go.
So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, holy, and then the wine ache is the obvious hangover. So holy wine ache, like some sort of ethereal hangover from a magical pool of wine.
Perfect. Thank you for telling me that, man.
And so that's one line, and I could tell you like another story about everyone.
But man, that's the end of the song, and then we're gonna fade out to the actual song that I forgot to ask you to send me.
Oh,
So when we're done, I'll just put that
problem.
one in.
Sure.
Matt, thank you very, very much for coming and talking about this song, man. I really enjoyed it, and I'm for sure I know people are gonna enjoy this one as well.
thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
When you put out your next record, man, you are more than welcome to come back and we can talk about another one.
I'd be happy to.
Have a good day, dude. Thank you.
Too. Thanks.
Two paper moons hanging on the night ceiling. One we know and one we don't. Gray and green. You can tell small flickers. Sometimes to be seen or unseen as it please. Holy whining, we drank holy, but something quiet sometimes is left behind. Two happy loons dancing by the bank, swoon for the stream, for the shore, deep blue and mellow. You can be friendly till it fades away. Holy whining, we drank holy, but something quiet sometimes is left behind. One passing crow getting to get down real low by the edge of the end. No use in running to pretend.